talking about the big topics of the day, giving you a voice. No judgment, just honesty.
Nicky Campbell. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Hello, I'm Ben Thompson. You're watching The Context on BBC News.
The changes needed to eliminate the risk of refoulement may be delivered in the future, but they have not been shown to be in place now. The Home Secretary's appeal is therefore dismissed.
I told Parliament earlier today that I'm prepared to change our laws and revisit those international relationships to remove the obstacles in our way. So let me tell everybody now, I will not allow a foreign court to block these flights.
He's wasted all of his time on a gimmick, and now he's absolutely nowhere. Will he level with the British public and finally admit he's failed to deliver on his promise?
Tonight, 10 of Labour's shadow ministers leave Sir Keir Starmer's front bench in a rebellion over his refusal to back a ceasefire in Gaza. Also on the programme tonight, UK plans to limit immigration hit a huge roadblock as the Supreme Court ruled the government's flagship plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda was unlawful. But the Prime Minister says he will push ahead. And we'll get the latest from Gaza, where Israel says its troops have found weapons in the Al-Shifa hospital complex. And we'll take you live to San Francisco, where US President Joe Biden is meeting his Chinese counterpart, leader Xi Jinping, for the first time in a year. To discuss all those stories tonight, I'm joined in London by Anna Mihalova, Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday, and Chris Bruce, Political Director of the American Civil Liberties Union in Georgia. But let's start tonight with that developing story in UK politics. 10 Labour MPs have been sacked or have resigned from the front bench after voting in favour of an SNP amendment calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It contradicts the party's policy on the issue. The front bench rebels included the high-profile shadow cabinet member Jess Phillips. She held a front bench position dealing with domestic violence. 7 other shadow ministers are also going, along with 2 parliamentary aides. Labour had ordered its MPs to back the party's own amendment, which called for longer humanitarian pauses, and they wanted them to abstain on the SNP proposal. Well, in total, 56 Labour MPs voted for the amendment. Well, the party leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said in a statement, "Well, every leader has a duty not to go back to a failed strategy of containment and neglect, but to forge a better and more secure future for both Palestinians and Israelis. I regret that some colleagues," he said, "felt unable to support the position tonight, but I wanted to be clear about where I stood and where I will stand." Our political correspondent is Ian Watson. He has more on what the votes could mean for the Labour Party and its leader.
But it's clearly a significant challenge to Sir Keir Starmer, because the Labour leader had said very clearly to his MPs that he wanted them to abstain, not to vote on this motion by the Scottish Nationalists. He saw that as playing politics, but also there's extensive efforts over the last 24 hours to try to negotiate Labour's position, Labour's own motion on this, to try to minimise the scale of that rebellion. And it doesn't look as though that's entirely succeeded. But Labour, again, reiterating, of course, Israel's right to defend itself, to take on terrorists who threaten it, also was critical of the conduct of some of that campaign by Israel. It called for lifting of siege conditions in Gaza. It talked about getting fuel as well as food into Gaza. It talked about Israel having a duty to protect hospitals, for example. We've seen, of course, those pictures from Gaza today, and that the Israeli raid on the hospital in Gaza City. So Labour, to some extent, will be more critical to try to take on board the concerns of some of their MPs, some of their grassroots, some of those MPs' constituents, but it wasn't enough to prevent a significant rebellion and probably one of the most significant challenges that Keir Starmer has faced since he became Labour leader and took over from Jeremy Corbyn.
So let's speak to the panel, and Anna's with us, Anna Michalova. And Anna, interesting one this, isn't it? Because it really does underline the difficulty that international governments have in being unified or coordinated in their response to what is happening in the Middle East. And this is quite a rebellion for Keir Starmer to be dealing with.
It is. I mean,